welcome to today's Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break, where we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Warren Morgan to the conversation. Dr. Morgan returned to Cleveland almost a year ago to serve as Chief Executive Officer for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. His desire to lead one of the largest school systems in the state of Ohio with nearly 40,000 students and over 6,500 staff members comes from a passion for realizing the potential of every child. His own history in education has its roots in the front of the classroom, where as a science teacher, he earned recognition as Outstanding Teacher of the Year in the St. Louis schools. He then honed his leadership skills as Executive Director of Teach for America in St. Louis, within our own CMSD as a network leader for the district's investment schools for 2 years, and then as a prestigious White House Fellow, where he served in the U.S. Department of Education under both Presidents Obama and Trump. He was pursued by the Indianapolis Public Schools to serve as Chief Academic Officer, a post he held until successfully securing the role as leader of CMSD. Dr. Morgan knows what it means to persevere through adversity and seeks to inspire that same determination to succeed within our own students. A house fire left his family devastated and near destitute just before his senior year in high school. He matriculated at a college where he often felt like he didn't belong. Yet he became student body president and homecoming king. Despite being told he had no substance, he went on to attain his master's and his PhD, as well as a fellow for public education leadership at Yale. In his press conference upon accepting the role here, Dr. Morgan said, "If we do not provide a high-quality education and ensure that our students feel safe, seen, heard, and valued, we will lose them and they will not be successful. I do this work for kids like me." Dr. Morgan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I definitely saw Brother Perry up there, so saw the salute there. Just appreciate being here this afternoon, and we'll just share a little bit of reflections from my first year as I'm coming up on being a year into the role. I'm going to share some slides. The first part of it will just be me just sharing a year in review of some of the things that we've done, but then really want to open it up to talk, not only for you to ask questions about what's happening in the system, but also some of the leadership lessons that I've learned throughout the year and I continue to learn. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, multiple screens here. And let me get to the presentation mode. Sorry, I can't see this part up here. There we go. Okay. Can everyone see the slides? Okay, awesome. Great. All right. Well, I want to open it up by there is a famous greeting that is passed between the Maasai warriors of a tribe in Africa, which is Kasedi and Ngeta. And Kasedi and Ngeta is something that the Maasai warriors pass between one another. And translated, it means, how are the children? How are the children? That's what the question is asked when Maasai warriors are passing that back and forth. And when Maasai warriors actually respond to the question of Kasedi and Ngeta, they always respond, all the children are well. And the reason why this sticks with me often is because in the context that we're in, not only in Cleveland, but in our nature and in our nation, most adults would not answer that question, Kasedi and Ngeta, with all the children are well. We know not only the academic challenges our students have faced, particularly after the pandemic, but the huge amounts of violence that they're faced with, some of the other issues of social emotional learning, mental health. All of these things our kids are plagued with that would give us pause to say that, not all the children are well. But when I think about why I do this work, and so many of us on this call do this work, it is so that we can get to a place when we are asked, how are the children? We can say all the children are well. We can say they're doing well, not only from their mental standpoint, but we could say they're doing well from an academic standpoint. And when I think about the work we have to do in Cleveland, we've made so much progress over time. And, that leads me into actually starting some work. We've made a lot of progress in the district under the Cleveland Plan. The Cleveland Plan has been very fundamental to the work that the district has been able to do over the last almost 15 years. The Cleveland that our state providers provided us, that gave us some autonomies to really create school choice, create high quality seats, and then also give some preference to creating pre-K learning opportunities for students, and also some post-secondary learning opportunities. So this has been an amazing plan that has helped our system make progress. But we're still not there yet. And actually, even some of the work and the progress that we made as a system in the Cleveland Plan prior to the pandemic, all that progress has slid back. As a matter of fact, our graduation rates have decreased. Proficiency rates in reading and math have decreased. There's been an uptick in serious violent incidents that are happening in schools and around schools. All of these things have been an uptick. And then also, just as we think about our system, we have older facilities. Actually, I happen to be in a building right now, was meeting with students right before here, and this is a really old building. And the question that the kids were asking me when I was meeting with them is, what are you going to do about our building? We don't have air conditioning. The building feels to be falling apart. So there's lots of work we still have to do to think about how we move forward. So I want to just ground this conversation in just the context of the district and the work that the Cleveland Plan did to help us make progress, but also ground us in the work we still have to do moving forward. So this is my first year, as I mentioned, as a CEO. Today is day 289. Now, whenever I do one of these things, I always do the countdown. I promise once I hit 365, I will not be counting it down. But it's, for me, so much has happened in this year. It's been helpful just to reflect and think about the moments of what's happening at every moment. And that's how I've been journaling and thinking about it. So day 289, we're almost at a year, but tomorrow will be a year to the date when I was announced as CEO. So really excited to celebrate this first year. But we walked into a lot of complexity. So we walked into all the challenges I just mentioned from the COVID slide of learning. But we also walked into a lot of financial challenges of the district. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But we had all of these ARP ESSER dollars, nearly $500 million of ARP ESSER dollars that the district had to actually help the district rebound from COVID. And all of those dollars in this school year. So needing to make some really tough financial decisions. We need to make decisions in our buildings and thinking about what the future footprint looks like. We've also been negotiating all of our union contracts. So all of these things are really important decisions, but they're all coming up in year one. And it's been challenging, to say the least, to navigate, but we've been getting through them. And so I'll share a little bit about that as we go through. On this slide, you can see the goals that I have for this year, and most of them we're on track for fulfilling. And this last one, we're in progress, really around financial stability, and that's the work that I've been spending a lot of time on in the last several weeks. So I prioritized coming in the beginning of my tenure to listen and learn. As a matter of fact, my first 100 days were filled with community listen and learn sessions. I did about 40 listen and learn sessions. My school visits actually been updated. At one point, it was 52. And by this point, I've been in almost every school. I'm going. Next week, I'm doing some more school visits, and the week after that, and then would have been in almost all of our schools, and we have over 100 schools across our system. But as I do these listen and learn sessions, go into schools like I'm in today, and talking with students and talking with staff members, the top things I hear about improved safety and security, and not only safety and security from the standpoint of violence or things coming into the school. I hear things like I heard from the kids today. they want to be seen, valued, and heard. They want to feel safe in who they are, in their identities, and knowing that they can be themselves and show up as themselves. So this is work we have to do. And that goes into strengthening our social emotional learning supports and our academic supports. We also heard community feedback around the way the district is communicating with the community, and also making sure there's transparent communication with leadership at the central office. We heard about extracurricular activities that will support the academic learning, making sure that there is a rigorous curriculum in all of our schools. And then we did hear some concerns about the K-8 model and potentially thinking about what happens in the middle grades. From that listen and learn tour, we took all the feedback we heard from that and created our core values based on the things we heard from the community. And these were the 5 core values that I had the opportunity of sharing at the State of the Schools last November that are guiding our work. That no matter which decisions we're making, the challenges we're faced with, these are the core values that we're grounding ourselves in and we want to be focused in on. So it's not only what the community told us that they value, it's also the way we want to show up in the way we're making decisions. We also took all of the feedback, which we had over 2,000 pieces of feedback from the Listen and Learn tour, to create what our priorities would be. So not only was the Listen and Learn tour a chance for me to hear from the community of what was top of mind, the community is actually driving the future direction of the district because what happened in the Listen and Learn tour not only informed our values, but also our strategic priorities. And these are our 5 priorities, really focusing on the culture of our schools, the academic instructional core, our educator learning. And educator isn't just teachers, it's every staff member within central office, making sure every staff member within the district, making sure they are learning. And then also making sure that all of our systems are efficient and coherent. And finally, that we're engaging with our broader community. From there, we set a set of 5-year goals that we're still in the process of really fine-tuning these, but a real start is really making sure we're focusing on college and career measures, focusing on achievement measures, culture and climate indicators, and equity measures. And I want to really focus in on the equity measures because a lot of times when data is rolled up about for the district, it's rolled up in an aggregate, which is great. It shows us on average how we're doing. But when you go underneath, there's a lot of data in there that is really shocking. One of those pieces of data that I've been pulling this year is our suspension rates. And right now, our Black and Brown students are suspended 80 times more than their white counterparts. When you think about the majority of our students are Black students. So when you look at that correlation between the majority of students are Black students, and if they're getting suspended that many more times, it really shows a pervasive problem that we have to do work around implicit bias. We have to do some work around how we're supporting our students of that are Black and Brown students, and also making sure that our staff are aware and cognizant of the disproportionality between these metrics. And so we're doing a better job calling out what our data is actually showing and the supports that we need to put around our students. So that was the State of the Schools, and I was able to come out of the State of the Schools and say, this is the path forward. This is what we want to focus in on. And then shortly after the State of the Schools, our financial realities really hit us when we had to present our November 5-year forecast. Every year we have to present a 5-year forecast in November and May. I'm getting ready to do another one next week. But when we presented the November 5-year forecast, because of the losing ARP ESSER dollars, we saw that we would be in the negative over the next several years. And the state of Ohio requires districts that fall into a negative balance to submit a state deficit reduction plan. When you have a negative balance, it triggers the state doing that. And if you don't actually show how you're going to get out of being in the negative, the state can actually take over the district. So this was a real harsh reality that by February of my first year, and at that point, I may have not even been at day 200 yet, needing to submit a plan to drastically reduce our deficit, making sure that almost $200 million was closed, that we can show that the state that we're moving in the right direction. So, as I mentioned, some of those challenges that we were losing the ARP ESSER dollars. We also had to show how we were going to close some programs, reduce staffing, of which we had to do, and I'm going to show a slide in a moment of what we had to do in order to really make sure that our budget was balanced. So these were the work that we had to do, and we were doing this work between January, February, and March. And as many of you may have seen, as we were proposing some different proposals of different programs we would close, different ways we would do it, it was fought with resistance. And there was a lot of things I learned about it. You know, as you're making decisions, you have to work with the community, you have to listen to the community. And these were just really tough decisions that needed to be made. And there was a lot of learning there. And I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. The other thing we've had to do was reduce our central office. I made a commitment in my goal that we will reduce central office by 10%. 2 weeks ago, we actually we met that goal. We surpassed that goal. We actually reduced central office by 12.6%. And by reducing central office, we were actually moving our staffing at central office to where we were pre-pandemic. Actually, we're lower than where we were pre-pandemic. So we've actually made some efficiencies to make sure that our central office staff was lower than where we were pre-pandemic. And this was tough. All of our central office staff are caring individuals. These are people that have worked hard in our system. And if the opportunity opens up again, we want to make sure we welcome them back. We also reduced each of our chief budgets. We're reducing things on travel, other expenditures, really to help our deficit. But one thing we did was we wanted to make sure that the instructional core, because all of those goals that I talked about in the beginning were really important, we did not touch our school budgets, meaning that the school-based budgeting pool remained flat. And we didn't do any cuts, major cuts at the school level based on this central office reduction. We took the hit at central office first. So we really wanted to honor our commitment to our schools. After all of that work, this is what our 5-year forecast looks like. And as you can see, we are in the black for at least the next 2 school years, but there's still red on here. We still are showing in row 3 a deficit. And then as you look in 26, 27, and some of our out years, we would end with a negative balance. And so we know that we still have some work to do on sustainability. We have some work to do to really make sure that our forecast is balanced. We also just passed a tentative teacher union agreement. We have 9 unions that we're bargaining right now, but we worked with our CTU and collaborated, and on Monday reached a tentative agreement. Both our board will be voting on this next week, and our teachers will be voting on the contract. But it is an agreement that will help our teachers and some of our other support staff get the pay that they deserve in the midst of us making some of these challenging decisions. So I'm really excited that we have this agreement. But with some of the challenges that are still ahead, we know that a community ask may be underway. We may be looking at potentially a levy in the fall and some other work that we may be doing to really support our future finances, because we have some work to do. But I want to share, just as I close, despite the challenges we face and despite the work we've had to do around our budget, this is what we're committed to. This is the future of CMSD. We're focused on equity for all students. We need to make sure we're not a district of the haves and have-nots, that if you live on one side of the city, or if you are from a certain demographic background, or your family makes a certain income, you don't have access to high-quality programs. We want to make sure every student has equity, access, quality, and that we're also focused on our strategic direction. Also, with this work that we're doing around equity, we're rolling out high-quality curricular options across the system. So just last month, we adopted a high-quality English language arts curriculum that every school will have across the entire district. So it won't be that if you go to one school, you will have a different English curriculum. Every student will have a high-quality program. And we're just starting with English language arts. We need to do it with math. We need to do it with science. We need to do it with our high-quality college and career options. And so this is the work we're focused on, and this is the work we're wanting people to continue to invest in, because we've made progress under the Cleveland plan, and we need to continue to make progress under the Cleveland plan by thinking about the future of the district. Finally, I just want to share just some lessons and reflections from this first year. I'll go back from current slide, not that slide at the end. So yeah, the last thing I just want to share are just these reflections, and then I'll open it up. Listening and learning is not a moment, it's a way of leading. So that has been really important to me. It's not just about a tour you do or this event that you're doing. It's ongoing, and I'm learning that as I learned that you have to hear from the community. I also have learned humility is the first and most important act of service. Humility is one of my core values, and so I just if as a leader, if we're not humble and taking into account all perspectives, it will be a quick downfall in our leadership. And so that has just reigned true for me throughout time. Also, perseverance, resilience, faith, and family have been grounding to me because the work is really hard and challenging. And you have to just keep getting back up every time you feel like you've fallen down, or every time there's a challenge, you just keep getting back up. And that faith, family, perseverance, and resilience have been grounding for me. And then I just remain blessed and excited to be a part of the wonderful Cleveland community. Even though the challenges that come with the role, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And so with that, I will stop and open it up for questions. I know I probably went a little bit beyond time, but want to make sure I open it up.
Dr. Morgan, thank you so much. So let's jump in. You have had to have some very difficult conversations within your first year. How have you navigated those with the various audiences that are impacted by the challenges you've had to face?
Great question. And I love that you use the word navigation, because that's one of the key words I say. It's all about navigation. It's about learning the audience. It's about learning what's important to that audience member, and not necessarily basing your decision solely on what they're saying, but listening to that perspective and also knowing where we're going. So when I talk about our 5-year goals or the future of CMSD, when I know where we're going, I have a roadmap for what we need to accomplish. But when I listen to the different constituents, it's about hearing what they're saying, because sometimes we're saying the same thing and we just need to figure out, okay, how do we reach a resolve based on knowing where we're going and also based on what this challenge is. And then sometimes there is no resolve. Sometimes it would just be different perspectives. But by doing the work of listening, by doing the work of engaging, it allows people to, one, get a chance to know me. I've been in spaces where people are like, "Oh, now we actually hear you. We know what you're about," and that has been helpful, even if we can't come to an agreement.
You mentioned some of the lingering effects of the pandemic. Can you share a little bit more about what you are seeing in the classrooms around mental health, truancy, trying to catch up on grade standards, all the things we've been hearing about these past few years?
So I would say there are a couple of things that I see in the classroom. One, whenever I'm in our schools, it's one of my favorite times because there's a lot of joy that is in our buildings. There's a lot of joy that's in the classrooms. Our teachers bring joy to the classroom, and our kids bring joy and levity. So it reminds me that despite the things we're hearing or the data we're seeing, like, being in school is what our kids need, and that is a sense of community for them. But I'm also seeing that there's a lot of work that needs to happen to catch our kids up. Sometimes it's not a matter of time. Our teachers may not have the time that's needed, or maybe our programs are not reaching all of our students. And so when I think about this centralization that we're trying to do of programs, we're not centralizing because the central office wants to control. We're centralizing because our schools and our students need support. And if we don't have a true theory around why the students are still struggling, we can't support. It'll be a hodgepodge of support. So for us to be strategic and for us to employ the right programs, it really helps for us to centralize and think about what are the best programs that work for our students, and to be able to provide those direct supports to students and staff members.
And we know that health and education are absolutely linked. Can you talk more about the school district's partnerships with community providers to support integrated school health and wellness?
Yeah, so one, our healthcare professionals, I'm always a huge fan of the work our healthcare professionals do. It's School Nurses Day, so shout out to our school nurses. And then also, my mom is a school nurse, so whenever I see a school nurse, I tell them, I'm like, hey, you're right in it. And my mom has already sent me texts this morning of saying, hey, don't forget School Nurses Day. I'm like, we haven't. So, but I'm always really invested in making sure our nurses, whether they're RNs or LPNs, feel seen, valued, because I know that perspective from my mom. But we've also been able to extend some partnerships with Metro Health to create school-based clinics. We just launched 3 that we did ribbon cuttings earlier this year, and we're in the process of launching 3 more. We also have a partnership with Metro Health in Lincoln West. So one of our high schools actually has classes on Metro Health campus where they are receiving instruction from physicians and nurses on the Metro Health campus. And that has also just really helped with our commitment to health and wellness. We also have an integrated health committee that is filled with some of our health practitioners as well as some of the health practitioners in the field, both at Metro Health or Cleveland Clinic, and really us coming up with a model to think about how do we support wellness, not only from our students, but also from a staff perspective.
As this school year is coming to an end and you look ahead to next year, what excites you most about the upcoming school year?
What excites me most is being able to start strong. Think about like just how I started last year, and just like it was like go go go, and I'm learning it's always go go go. I'm always on the go. I feel like I'm just like running and flying everywhere. But it will be good to take a step back and just say, what did we learn, and how do we start strong? How do we set some systems up in place based on what we've learned and just start strong? It would also be the first year that my full team would start as a team. We emerged our team, like we put the team in place like around December. And so this will be helpful that the full team will be emerged in place.
What would your students, faculty, and staff want the community to most know about CMSD?
I would say the care of everyone, despite the differences, this is a caring community. Like everyone cares about our kids. Everyone wants our kids to win. And that is a through line that I hear across the board. Now, we may agree or disagree on the pathway to get there, but everyone is saying our kids deserve more, our kids deserve the best, and everyone is really all in for our kids, and even the kids themselves. And so I think that is what makes this community unique. And that isn't just CMSD, that's the broader community. Like there is a large wraparound of supports in the broader Cleveland community that is focused in on the school district and wants the school district to win. And for that, I'm truly grateful.
What are some of the greatest needs that you anticipate over the next year, and how can those of us on the call and in this community support you to meet those needs?
Yeah, so one of them would be, as we think about our finances, and if there's a space where we're thinking about community ask, like that will help us, because there's this work we have to do to make sure our district is stable for the next several years. And then there's work we need to do to make some tough decisions around our buildings. There's work we have to do to make some tough decisions on which programs we'll have or our staffing model in the future. So that goes to the next thing that I would say that this community can do. And it's two-pronged. One, ask the tough questions and keep me honest. So I appreciate that. People ask the tough questions and keep me honest. But then at the same time, knowing the challenges we have when we have decisions, not that you have to agree with the decisions, but also know that the decisions are tough. And if it's a matter of there's a decision that isn't liked, come with a solution, because it may be a blind spot that we haven't thought about that. And it's like, oh, this is a pathway we could be thinking about, because I want to be in that dialogue. But sometimes when faced with the fact of don't make this decision and there's no alternative, it becomes just as hard, because it's like, well, we have to do something. We have to respond to a need. And so that is something the community can continue to help me on and on our journey.
Dr. Morgan, thank you so very much for your time today. And thank you for your patience as you went through this first year and listened and learned and really embraced our greater Cleveland community, and most importantly, our children. We're so appreciative of your leadership.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of your leadership, and appreciate the work that the Leadership Center is doing to develop all of us across the city. So thank you so much.